The Cage in the Jungle. Jack Carson had seen many strange things in the galaxy, but nothing like this jungle. He stepped carefully through the thick vines, brushing aside glowing leaves that pulsed with soft blue light. The air was hot and wet. Alien birds screeched from the trees. Somewhere deep in the forest, something growled. The planet was called Varela 9. It was home to a proud alien race known as the Tyranni, tall beings with golden skin and sharp eyes. Jack was the first human allowed to live among them, part of a peace project to help connect alien cultures with Earth. But not everyone welcomed him, especially Riva. She was young by Tyranni years, about 16 in human age, but already a skilled tracker and hunter. Her eyes followed Jack wherever he went, always cold, always suspicious. One morning she approached him near the edge of the jungle with a simple message. "You want to know our truth, human? Come." Jack followed without question. They walked in silence for nearly an hour, deeper into the wild, deeper into something ancient. Finally, they stopped at a high fence of thick black metal. It was covered in moss and strange claw marks. The air smelled like blood and old bones. Inside the fence was a giant cage, and in that cage was a beast. It lay in the shadows, half asleep. But Jack could see its shape, massive, muscular, with long claws and glowing red eyes. Its dark fur shimmered like smoke, and its breath sounded like thunder. Riva didn't look at the beast. She looked at Jack. "We call it Threx," she said. "Our ancestors found it, tried to kill it, they failed." Jack stepped closer. "Why is it in a cage?" "Because it kills everything," she said. "It is our apex predator. Even our strongest warriors fear it." Jack stared at the creature. It didn't move. It only watched. "Has anyone tried taming it?" he asked. Riva narrowed her eyes. "Taming? You think it's a pet? This isn't Earth, human. You don't tame. Gods of death." Jack smiled slightly. "We've tamed lions, wolves, even dragons in stories." "This is no story," Riva said. "It killed 6 Tyranni before we trapped it. It doesn't feel. It doesn't think. It just hunts." Jack looked again. Something about the beast's eyes caught him. Something deep inside. Something not wild, but tired. "Why bring me here?" he asked. "To scare you," Riva said. "To remind you, this planet is not yours." Then she turned and walked away. But Jack stayed. He waited until the jungle sounds returned. Then slowly he stepped closer to the cage. The beast moved, its head lifted, eyes locking on his. Jack didn't reach for his blaster. He didn't run. He crouched down and spoke softly. "You don't look like a monster to me." The Threx blinked. Its eyes shimmered in the light. Jack reached into his pack and pulled out a piece of dried meat. He slid it through a gap in the bars. The Threx didn't move. Minutes passed. Then it crawled forward and took the food gently. Jack smiled. He stood, up heart pounding. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "I'll come back." The beast said nothing, but it didn't growl, it didn't attack. It simply watched him walk away. From deep in the jungle, Riva watched, hidden in the trees. Her eyes were wide with shock. And maybe, just maybe, curiosity. The human touch, Next morning the jungle air was heavy with mist. Birds cried from the high trees. Insects buzzed lazily and the thick canopy let only thin streams of sunlight pass through. Jack Carson returned. He walked alone through the jungle paths, a bag over his shoulder and a strange calm in his chest. He had faced many unknowns in his life, hostile planets, wild storms, soldiers from other worlds, but never a creature like the Threx. He stepped carefully through the tall grass until the dark metal cage appeared again, massive, silent, and half covered in green moss. It stood like a forgotten temple in the jungle, and inside, the beast was waiting. The Threx lay in the far corner, watching Jack with glowing eyes. It didn't snarl. It didn't move. Jack stopped a few feet away and sat on a low rock outside the fence. "I wasn't sure if I'd come back," he said out loud. "But something about you." I couldn't stop thinking about it. The creature blinked slowly. Jack opened his bag and pulled out more dried meat and a small canister of fresh water. "I brought breakfast." He slid the food carefully through a wide space in the bars. The Threx didn't rush forward. It stood slowly, walking on 4 thick legs. Its claws were massive, sharp enough to rip through steel, but they stayed close to the ground. It sniffed the food, then it ate. Slowly, carefully, Jack watched every movement. The way it kept one eye on him, always alert, always ready. "You don't trust me." "That's fair," Jack said. "I don't trust people easily either." He took a slow breath. "Back on Earth we had creatures like you. Wolves, lions, even tigers. We feared them too. But we also learned, if you give them respect, they give it back." The Threx made a low sound in its throat. Not a growl, more like a hum. Jack smiled. Was that a reply? From behind a tree, Riva watched again. She had followed him at a distance, silent like a shadow. She couldn't understand what she was seeing. This human, this fragile, weaponless outsider, was feeding their most dangerous predator, and it wasn't attacking him, it was listening. Later that day, Jack returned to the village. The Tirani people eyed him with cold stares, especially the elders. They didn't like how much time he spent alone. They didn't like how calm he was around danger. But no one said anything. Yet, that night, Riva knocked softly on his hut door. Jack opened it, surprised. "Didn't expect you." Riva stepped inside without a word. She looked serious. "You went to the cage again," she said. Jack nodded. "Yes, you're feeding it. Yes, you're talking to it." "I'm trying." Riva stared at him. "Do you think you're special, human? That it won't kill you just because you gave it meat?" "No," Jack said calmly. "I think it's smarter than you believe." Riva frowned. "It has killed dozens. It was born to destroy." Jack leaned forward. Or maybe it was trained to destroy, forced to fight, caged for so long. Maybe it forgot how to be anything else. Riva hesitated. Then she said something, quietly. "It was my brother who helped trap the Threx. He didn't make it out." Jack's expression softened. "I'm sorry." Riva looked away. "So if you're wrong and if it's just pretending, you'll die like he did." Jack nodded. "I understand." She stepped toward the door, then paused. "I'm coming with you tomorrow." He raised an eyebrow. "To stop me?" "No," she said. "To watch." Then she left. The next morning, Jack returned to the cage. But this time, Riva walked beside him. Neither of them spoke on the way. The jungle was loud, but they were quiet. When they reached the cage, the Threx was already awake. It stood tall, near the bars, watching them both. Jack knelt slowly and placed food at the same spot. Riva stayed several feet back, tense and ready. The Threx didn't react to her. It moved forward slowly and began to eat, calm, slow, careful. Riva whispered, "It's not afraid." Jack nodded. "And it's not angry." He turned toward her. "Want to try?" Riva shook her head fast. "No. It won't hurt you. You don't know that." "Neither do you," Jack said softly. "But if we want peace, someone has to take the first step." Riva swallowed hard. Then slowly she stepped closer. She took a small piece of food and, hands shaking, slid it through the bars. The Threx looked at her. Their eyes met. For a moment, the world stopped. Then the Threx took the food, gently. Riva gasped. It didn't growl, it didn't attack. It just sat back and let her stay. Jack smiled. "See?" Riva didn't smile, but she didn't move away either. She just stared at the creature, with something new in her eyes. Not fear, not hate. Wonder. The Beast's story. The third day came with soft rain. Drops fell through the leaves, tapping against the cage roof like distant drums. The jungle seemed quieter, almost respectful, as if the world was waiting. Jack returned to the cage early, carrying his usual bag of food and supplies. But this time, Riva was already there. She stood still, her eyes fixed on the giant creature resting behind the bars. The Threx, who now had a name, Goran. Jack had started calling him that the day before. Goran hadn't reacted to the name at first, but later when Jack spoke it softly, the beast had turned its head. It understood. Now as Jack walked up beside Riva, he nodded. "You're early." "I couldn't sleep," she said. "I kept thinking about yesterday." Jack smiled. "Me, too." They both looked into the cage. Goran was watching them. His red eyes weren't angry, not wild. Just waiting. Jack crouched down, opened his bag, and slid out a metal box. "What's that?" Riva asked. "A translator device. Not perfect, but I want to try something." Jack had modified the device overnight using old tech from his ship. It was designed for scanning brainwave patterns from non-human creatures and converting emotional signals into sound. He placed it near the cage and activated it. Low hum filled the air. Goran moved forward slowly. The device blinked, then buzzed. Words came, broken, robotic, but clear. "Who are you?" Riva jumped back. "It spoke," Jack smiled. "No, it's not speech. It's emotion." Translated, he turned to the cage. "I'm Jack, this is Riva." The device blinked again. "You not fear?" Jack shook his head. "No. Should I?" "Always. Fear me." Riva stepped forward, speaking directly. "Because you killed." A pause. "Was told to." Riva looked at Jack, shocked. "It obeyed someone?" Jack nodded slowly. "He was used, forced." He looked back at Goran. "Who told you to kill?" The device crackled. Voices from sky, pain, cages, fight. Riva's expression changed. She whispered, "Our elders used to tell stories about beasts taken off-world, brought back broken." Jack stared at Goran. "You were captured, trained like a weapon, then abandoned." Goran didn't move, but the light in his eyes dimmed. "Alone." The word echoed through the trees. Riva sat down beside Jack, her voice soft. "He didn't choose this." Jack nodded. "No. He was made into something." Riva's voice cracked. "So, were we?" Jack looked at her, surprised. Riva explained, "When I was a child, we were taught to fear everything outside our world. Humans, creatures like him, even stars." She looked at Goran. "But maybe we were just afraid of what we didn't understand." Goran stepped closer to the bars. Slowly, carefully, he lowered his head, not in weakness, in trust. Jack reached out and touched his massive jaw. Then Riva, with shaking hands, placed her palm on his fur. It was warm, alive. Not a monster, a soul. Later, that day, Jack and Riva returned to the village. For the first time, Riva didn't walk behind Jack. She walked beside him. The villagers noticed. The elders noticed. Whispers followed them. "The girl walks with the human. She touches the beast. She betrays our ways." That night, Jack was called before the council. Riva went with him. Inside the tall stone hall, the elder leaders of the Tirani stood in a circle. Their faces were hard, their voices cold. "You continue to feed the predator," the head elder said. "You endanger our people." Jack stayed calm. "He hasn't attacked. He listens. He trusts." "Until he kills again," another elder said. Riva stepped forward. "He won't." "You cannot know that." "I do," she said firmly, "because he's more like us than you think." The room went silent. Jack stepped beside her. Goran was made into a monster, but inside, He's just looking for peace. The head elder narrowed his eyes. Peace. With a killer? Jack didn't flinch. He's only a killer because someone else pulled the trigger. The elders looked at each other, then gave their decision. You will not go near the cage again. Jack opened his mouth to protest, but Riva grabbed his arm. We'll find another way, she whispered. But deep down they both knew time was running out. That night as the jungle winds howled, the council secretly gave an order. At sunrise, the beast dies. Trust broken. The jungle was dark and still, but inside the Tirani village, tension moved like fire in dry grass. Riva paced in her hut, her fists clenched. Her mind kept returning to the words she had heard whispered by one of the council guards. At sunrise, the beast dies. Her heart pounded. Her people had decided. They were going to kill Goran, the same creature she once feared, now the one she couldn't imagine losing. She left her hut without a sound and made her way to Jack's. Jack sat at his table working on his small translator device, trying to fine-tune it. Riva walked in without knocking. They're going to execute him, she said, her voice shaking. Jack looked up, his face turning cold. When? Dawn. He stood quickly. We don't have much time. They gave the order behind closed doors, Riva continued. No trial, no test, just death. Jack slammed his fist against the table. After everything he showed. Them? After everything we told them? They don't want to believe, she said. They'd rather kill the thing that scares them than face the truth. Jack's voice dropped. Then we stopped them. The cage had been surrounded by guards. 4 warriors stood watch, spears in hand, their eyes cold. A priest from the council stood nearby, already preparing the ritual flames. Inside, Goran lay quietly, as if he knew what was coming. He didn't move, didn't growl, just watched the stars above the cage through the bars. Jack and Riva stood. Behind a tree hidden, Riva whispered, We won't be able to fight them all. We don't need to fight them, Jack said. We need to outsmart them. He reached into his bag and pulled out a smoke canister from his Earth survival kit. I'll draw them off, he said. You unlock the cage. Riva hesitated. If they catch us, they won't, he said, and even if they do, it's worth it. A few minutes later, Jack stepped from the trees. He raised his voice. Hey, I have a message for the council. The guards turned. One lifted a weapon. Then, boom! Smoke burst into the air, thick and fast. The guards shouted, coughing and stumbling. Riva ran from the other side. She reached the cage, pulled out the stolen keystone from her tunic and slid it into the lock. Click. The door creaked open. Goran didn't move. Come on, Riva whispered. We're getting you out of here. Still, he didn't move. His red eyes stared into hers. Why, trust. Again? The translator device buzzed from Riva's belt. She blinked. What? Jack ran up behind her, pulling her away from the smoke. Goran growled softly, almost hurt. Hurt. Betrayed. Again? Riva's eyes filled with tears. They were going to kill you. But not us. Not me. She stepped closer, placing a hand on his fur. I didn't know what they planned. I swear it. The beast stared at her. Then, slowly, it stepped out of the cage, not with rage, with dignity. Jack smiled. Let's go. But as they turned to run, a horn blared in the village. The smoke cleared. Guards shouted, The beast is loose. The human is helping it. Arrows flew. Goran roared and leapt in front of Jack and Riva, shielding them with his body. One arrow hit his side. He didn't flinch. He turned, baring his teeth, but he didn't attack. He only protected. The villagers paused. They stared, and for the first time, they saw. Not a monster, not a killer, a guardian. Riva stood in front of Goran and shouted to the crowd. He didn't hurt us. He saved us. Jack raised his hands. He could have killed everyone of you, but he didn't, because he chose not to. The guards hesitated. One of the younger warriors lowered his spear, then another. The crowd was still. Riva looked back at Goran, blood running down his side. "You saved me," she whispered. "Now it's our turn." That night, they hid in the jungle. Jack treated Goran's wound using earth medicine. The beast lay still, allowing him to work. Riva watched the stars, her voice quiet. "I thought I understood my people, but they're just afraid." Jack nodded. "Fear makes people do cruel things." Riva looked at Goran. But he chose not to be cruel. Goran lifted his head, his voice deep through the translator. "Pain does not mean hate." Jack smiled. "You're wiser than most people I know." The jungle rustled nearby. Zanir, a young Tirani rebel, stepped into view. "They've called a council meeting," he said. "The elders are shaken. Many saw what happened." Riva stood. "Will they listen?" Zanir shrugged. "Maybe. But they've given you one chance to prove what you claim." Jack raised an eyebrow. "How?" Zanir looked at Goran. "If your beast can survive in the wild for 3 days, without killing a single living thing, they will allow him to live." Riva whispered. "And if he kills?" Zanir's face turned grim. "They'll hunt him, until he's nothing but a story." Jack turned to Goran. "Do you understand?" The Threx looked at him. "Choice is mine?" "Yes," Jack said. "It always was." Goran stood, silent, strong. Then he walked into the jungle, alone. The escape. The jungle was alive with sound. Leaves rustled, insects hissed. Distant predators howled in the night. But for once, none of it frightened Jack or Riva. They weren't running, they were following. Goran, the Threx, the beast once, feared as a monster, had walked into the wild on his own, silent and strong. His mission, survive for 3 days without killing. A final test of trust, a final chance at life. If he succeeded, he would be spared. If he failed, he would be hunted forever. Jack and Riva followed at a distance, keeping out of sight. They weren't supposed to help, but they couldn't stay away. "We'll stay far enough not to interfere," Jack said, "but close enough if something goes wrong." Riva nodded. "I trust him. I just don't trust what else is out here." By midday, the sun blazed through the trees. Goran moved carefully, avoiding other animals. Once, a wild stalker beast lunged from a tree, but instead of fighting, Goran simply roared and the smaller creature ran off in fear. Riva whispered, "He's choosing peace." Jack smiled. "Every moment is a choice. That's what makes him different." That night they camped in a small clearing. Goran slept nearby under a thick tree, his back turned, but his ears twitching with every jungle noise. Jack and Riva sat around a small heat stone. Riva broke the silence. "My people taught me that beasts act only on instinct. No thinking, no feelings, just hunger." Jack nodded. "Earth said the same things once. Then someone risked their life to sit beside. A wolf, a tiger, even an elephant. And history changed." She looked toward Goran. "Do you think he's still wild?" Jack shook his head. "No. I think he's what we could be, if we stopped choosing fear first." On the second day, trouble came. A team of hunters from a rival tribe entered the jungle. They weren't from the village. They hadn't agreed to the council's trial. They came to kill. Jack spotted them first. 6 warriors, heavily armed, moving like shadows through the trees. "They don't know the deal," Jack muttered. "Or they don't care." Riva clenched, her fists. "If they see him." They ran ahead to warn Goran. They found him standing near a calm river watching fish swim under the surface. For a moment he looked almost peaceful. "Goran," Jack whispered. "Hunters are coming." The beast turned his head. "Fight. Now?" The translator device buzzed. "No," Jack said. "Not unless they strike first." Goran nodded once. Then he did something unexpected. He lowered himself into the river, hiding beneath the waterline, leaving only his eyes above. Riva gasped. He's hiding? Jack smiled. He's choosing not to be a threat. Minutes later, the hunters arrived. They looked around the empty clearing. There were tracks here, one muttered. Then he's close. Fan out. They didn't find him. They never even looked in the water. Eventually, they gave up and moved on. Jack and Riva waited, holding their breath. Then, Goran rose slowly from the river, water dripping from his fur, silent and calm. Jack stared in amazement. He outsmarted them. Riva smiled wide-eyed. He's not just peaceful, he's clever. That night, the sky opened with rain. The jungle turned to mud, and thunder echoed like giant footsteps. They sheltered under a thick tree root. Goran curled close to them, not for protection, for warmth. Jack reached out and touched his fur. You're going to pass this trial? Goran replied with a soft hum. Riva laid her head back and whispered, maybe it was never him we needed to test. Jack looked at her. What do you mean? She looked up at the stars. Maybe the real test was for us, to see if we could see past fear, past stories, past cages. Jack didn't answer, because he knew she was right. On the third and final day, everything changed. As they approached the northern cliff trail, they heard screams, not animal screams, voices. Small group of council scouts had been ambushed by a massive jungle predator, something ancient, covered in armor like scales and moving like a shadow. The Vornak. Even the Tyranni feared it. It was said to be the only thing in the jungle stronger than the Threx. Jack and Riva rushed toward the noise. They found two scouts cornered at the cliff edge. The Vornak stalked closer, mouth open, teeth dripping with venom. And then, Goran appeared. He didn't roar. He didn't wait. He charged. The Vornak turned, surprised. The two giants crashed together, shaking the jungle. Claws, teeth, roars. Riva shouted, Goran, don't kill it. But Jack shook his head. He knows. Goran fought hard, pushing the Vornak back with powerful strikes, but never went for the throat. He used his weight, his strength, his speed. He fought with control. Finally, he pinned the Vornak down. He raised his claw, then stopped. He looked at the beast and let it go. The Vornak hissed, then fled into the trees. The scouts, shaking, stared at Goran. One whispered, He saved us. Jack walked forward and placed a hand on Goran's side. You passed. That evening, Goran walked back into the village, not in chains, not in a cage, but beside Jack and Riva. The entire village gathered in silence. The elders watched from the high steps. The head elder spoke. He harmed no one. Jack shook his head. Not a soul. Even when others attacked, he showed mercy. Riva stepped forward. He is not our enemy. He is our lesson. The crowd murmured. One by one, warriors stepped forward and bowed. To Goran. The trial of the beast. The temple hall of the Tyranni was silent. Stone pillars towered over the room like frozen guards. Ancient fire bowls lit the corners with soft golden flames. Villagers filled the space in quiet rows, seated on carved benches, their eyes fixed on the center, and in that center stood Goran, the beast who had once been feared. Now he stood still, scarred, proud, silent. Beside him were Jack and Riva, dressed in ceremonial sashes, facing the Tyranni High Council seated in a circle above. This was no ordinary meeting. This was a trial. The trial of the beast. The lead elder, Grand Voice Saran, rose slowly. The creature has survived 3 full cycles in the wild, he said. No blood spilled, no lives taken. Yet some still doubt. Jack stepped forward. What more do you need? He had every chance to kill. He chose not to. A second elder leaned forward. Beasts don't choose, they act. Perhaps this one is just broken. Riva's voice was firm. He is not broken. He's healing. Or hiding, the elder replied. Jack turned to Goran. He activated the translator device strapped to the beast's side. A soft hum echoed in the chamber. Jack nodded. Speak, if you want to. The device flickered. Goran's deep, quiet voice echoed through the hall. I was not made to speak. I was made bound to fight, to kill, to obey. But I remember, before the cage, before pain, I remember peace. Murmurs spread across the crowd. They showed me choice. Goran continued. The girl, the man, the forest. I felt hunger, and I waited. I felt fear, and I stayed. I felt rage, and I chose silence. The hall went still. Jack looked up at the elders. If that isn't proof of a soul, what is? Grand Voice Saran stepped down from the circle and approached Goran slowly. The elder was old, his hands shaking, his steps cautious. He looked up into Goran's eyes. The Threx stood completely still. The elder reached forward and placed a hand on the beast's chest. His voice cracked. I feel no fire here, only stillness. He turned to the crowd. Then I ask you, is the purpose of justice to destroy or to understand? The silence broke. One by one, villagers stood. Some nodded, some wept, some bowed. Not to the elders, to Goran. Later that night, the village held a quiet celebration, not with loud music or dancing, but with light. Torches were placed in a ring around the village square. Goran stood in the center, unchained, unmuzzled. Riva approached with a ceremonial medallion carved from stone and crystal. She placed it around Goran's neck. By order of the council, she said, her voice steady, you are now a protector of the Tyranny. The crowd cheered softly, still unsure how to treat a creature they once feared, but no longer doubting what they had seen. Jack stood beside Goran, a smile on his face. You earned it, he whispered. Goran rumbled low, a sound like thunder, but peaceful. Riva turned to Jack. You gave him a second chance. Jack shook his head. No. He gave himself one. We just gave him the space to choose. She smiled, and he chose right. The next day, Goran stood at the village gate. He looked toward the wild jungle, the place where he had been caged, hunted, feared. Now it was his home. Riva approached him, offering a woven sash marked with her tribe's sign. Wherever you go, this tells others you are family, she said. Goran bowed his head. Jack stood with his pack, ready to leave. Riva asked, Are you going back to Earth? Jack nodded. For now, they need to hear this story, the real one. Riva looked up. Will they believe it? Jack grinned. They will, once they meet him. She looked at Goran. You're taking him? Jack looked at the massive beast beside him. He's not just a story, he's a bridge. Goran let out a soft breath and stepped forward, walking beside Jack. Riva raised her hand in farewell. You tamed him, she whispered. Jack shook his head. No, he said. I just listened. He tamed himself. The day he roared for us. The sky over Varela 9 was clear. Jack Carson stood at the edge of the launch pad, looking up at the silver transport ship as it prepared for liftoff. Next to him sat the creature who had once been feared, caged, and nearly executed, now wearing a woven sash of honor across his massive chest. Goran. He no longer growled in fear or walked in anger. His steps were calm, his eyes steady. Jack turned to him. You ready? The beast tilted his head and gave a low hum through the translator. Home is not a place, it is a choice. Jack smiled. Then let's choose it together. As they stepped toward the ship, a voice crackled over the comlink. Emergency transmission. Incoming threat, repeat. Unknown warship entering Varela space. Everyone froze. Villagers gathered at the edge of the trees. Elders whispered. Riva ran to Jack, eyes wide with alarm. That signal, "It's not from this world," she said. "And it's not peaceful." Jack looked up. The stars shimmered, and then dimmed. A dark, jagged ship emerged from the sky like a blade slicing through light. Unmarked. Silent. Armed. Riva whispered, "Raiders. Pirates from the outer systems, known for slavery, violence, and wiping out small colonies. They were not here for trade. They were here to take." The villagers panicked. Warriors grabbed weapons. Children ran for shelter. But the elders stood frozen. "We have no chance," one muttered. "We are not prepared." Then a sound echoed through the village, a deep, earth-shaking roar. Goran stepped to the front, not to run, to fight. Jack looked at him. "You don't have to do this." "I do," the translator hummed. "I remember the cage. I remember fear. But today, I give back." He turned toward the jungle, toward the threat, toward the future. When the raider ship landed, its doors opened wide. Dozens of armored beings marched out, some machine, some alien, all carrying heavy weapons. Their leader, a tall, scarred alien, with glowing red eyes, stepped forward, voice booming through a speaker. "Give us your strongest. Give us your young, or be destroyed." The villagers stood behind weak defenses. Then the trees parted, and Goran stepped into the clearing. The raiders paused. "What is that?" one asked. The leader laughed. "Is that your offering? A pet?" Jack stepped beside Goran. "He's no pet. He's your warning." The raiders raised weapons. Goran lowered his head and charged. The battle that followed was fast, loud, and unforgettable. Goran moved like a storm, leaping, dodging, striking. He slammed through armor, roared, into enemy ranks. He didn't kill, but he stopped them. He grabbed weapons and crushed them. He tossed raiders aside like leaves. He shielded children with his body and pushed back wave after wave. The villagers, inspired by his courage, joined in. Even Riva fought side by side with her people, yelling, "He roars for us!" Jack used his blaster to cover the flanks, guiding others to safety. It wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight for change, and in the middle of it all was Goran. Bleeding, brave, free. When the last raider ship fled the sky, leaving behind broken weapons and stunned soldiers, the village stood in awe. Goran limped back to the center of the square and collapsed onto one knee. He didn't roar in victory. He simply looked at the villagers, as if asking, "Did I pass this test too?" And they answered with silence, then applause, then tears. Children rushed to him. Elders bowed. Even the council placed their staffs before him. "Protector," they whispered. "Brother, beast of honor." Days later, the village began rebuilding. Riva helped plant new crops. Jack repaired the old signal tower. Peace returned, but it felt different now. Stronger, earned. Jack sat beside Goran at sunset. They watched the stars slowly reappear. "Did you ever think," Jack asked, "you'd be a hero?" Goran rumbled low. "I thought I would die forgotten. In chains." Jack nodded. "So did I." "About myself." Riva approached and sat between them. "The people tell your story now," she said. "They even added it to our songs." Goran tilted his head. "What do they call it?" She smiled. "The day he roared for us." A child sits under the stars listening to Riva tell the tale, and the man stood beside the beast, not because he owned it, but because he believed in it. And the beast chose to stand beside us. The child asks, "Was it real?" Riva smiles. "It still is."